Hutus and Tutsis had a major conflict, but is there really no genetic difference between them? Let's examine their DNA. Under Belgian colonial rule, Tutsis were favored for supposedly looking more European than Hutus. Many today claim the groups are genetically identical, but the data tells a different story. Though both speak Bantu languages, their DNA differs sharply. When analyzing DNA of Hutus from Burundis, we see that they are of 83% Bantu origin, which would be the groups that expanded east from west.
Wow. So Hutus,
Bantu origin.
so Hutu are 83% Bantu origin. Okay? And what about Tutsi? Just keep watching.
Which would be the groups that expanded east from West Africa around modern Cameroon.
So if you all don't know, Bantu origin, the origin is coming from Niger, Congo. So from Niger, I don't know how you call Niger. You call it Niger, but it's Niger actually. Which come from Nigeria. Nigeria is like after Niger. Nigeria is smaller than Niger, and Niger is just right away after Nigeria, right? And there's supposed to be some certain people like same people, but it's not. So that's why you get also some Bantu in Nigeria because of Niger, Congo. So from Niger, Congo, they had to trace like the origin of the Bantu, and then you find out that Hutus came from West Central Africa, and as a matter of fact, Tutsi are not like that. So let me play so you can keep watching and listen.
The rest of their genetic profile at 13% and 4% is Cushitic and Nilo-Saharan, indicating ties to Africa around modern Cameroon. The rest of their genetic profile at 13% and 4% is Cushitic and Nilo-Saharan, indicating ties to local East Africans. Meanwhile, Tutsis from Rwanda and Burundi scored 50% of Cushitic ancestry, with Cushitic being ancestry that peaks in Somalis, Afars, and Oromos. Tutsis scored a quarter of Nilo-Saharan ancestry, which is ancestry like one found in Dinkas, and only a quarter of Bantu admixture. This shows Tutsis descend mostly from local East African.
You get it? Tutsi are only quarter of Bantu. 50% of their genetics is being found into Nilotics. Like, I once have an argument with this guy on social media, on Instagram, keep on telling him that Tutsi are not Bantu. They are not Bantu. They have the mixture of Bantu. As of now, actually, you can find a lot of them, like they got mixtures of Bantu, but originally they are not, because now people mingle like, I mean, it's everywhere. It's understanding, right? But generally, literally speaking, they are not. They are Kushite, Nilo-Saharan groups, right? Just like the guy is specifying, almost close to the Dinkas, people in Sudan and Oromos and Afar in Eritrea and Ethiopia. You can literally tell that there is a bigger difference. Their skin is very smooth, and their nose is kind of long. Bantu have no long nose, like a man. Hmm? You see, their lips tend to be smaller. Like Bantu lips, kind of big, things like that, and stuff like that. So genetically, they are not the same people. So you should know about that. And this is why, like, when you put two people that they are not the same in one country, and that's what caused the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, because every tribe want to dominate. These people they want to dominate. It's only like two tribes and two genetically differences. So what's gonna happen is this one will want to overtake this one. This one will want this one to serve him, and that brought the fire. It's crazy, man.
And Cushitic
Really crazy.
Nilo-Saharan groups, while Hutus are linked to later Bantu migrations from the west. Tutsis are also 20% West Eurasian through their Cushitic ancestry, which is mixed, while Hutus are only 3% West Eurasian.
Tutsi are 20% West Eurasian. 20% West Eurasian. That means they can live in the Middle East and just fit in the Middle East, right? Like you can see Ethiopian sometimes, but Bantu, like 3% West Eurasian. We only 3%. So this is just to clarify you. Genetically, we are built different. And people should know that there is some disadvantage and then there is also some advantage of being built different. People that don't want to understand, they don't want to understand. People who want to understand, they do want to understand. All right. So if you want to
So
learn,
this would
learn.
shift Tutsis closer to Europeans compared to Hutus. Hutus and Tutsis had a
You see? So, and apparently Europeans, they used to privilege more Tutsi than Hutu, right? Which is apparently they used to think that Tutsi are more smarter than Hutus. I mean, I've heard about that. I've been in Burundi, and Burundi is literally dominated by Hutus, right? Even Rwanda, it's dominantly by Hutu. And then they always say like Tutsis are more smarter than Hutus. I don't understand. People can be smart and people cannot be smart. It doesn't depend with your I will say genetics, but also I do understand there are some genes that they are more developed than others, right? But this is actually depend with the country. Like you live in the same country, you same school, same everything, but you say you are smarter than this. Okay, it might be happening, but it's not really too much. So I had to ask ChatGPT about the Hutu people and Tutsi. All right. So these are the Hutu people. Hutu people. Hutu people are one of the main ethnic groups in Rwanda and Burundi, located in Central East Africa alongside the Tutsi and Twa. They make up three major ethnic groups in this country. Quick fact: population, largest ethnic group in both Rwanda and Burundi. Right? So, although Kagame is a Tutsi, Museveni from Uganda is a Tutsi, but the majority of those countries has more Hutus than Tutsi. I'll tell you why. Because the reason why you find more Hutus is because Hutus are they come from West Central Africa, right? Still sub-Saharan, right? And Tutsi, they are not coming from sub-Saharan. They're coming from the Kushite, like Nilo-Saharan, right? Like let's say from Egypt up to Sudan, Ethiopia, and then the last country was like Rwanda. But even in South Africa, you can find some people with the Tutsi figures. I've seen a lot of them, especially in the Zulu community. You see somebody, and I told him, if you go to Rwanda, you're gonna fit as a Tutsi, and they'll be like, "Oh, really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, exactly, because I can see your features." So genetically, if they try to test your DNA, they will find out that you have some Kushite and Nilo-Saharan genes in you, which is true. And that's why you see there are few of Tutsi in Rwanda, but plenty of Hutu, and in Burundi as well. Because the desertifications of Sahara, which push the people to migrate from one region to another, and then when they go to Sudan, they settle. When they go to Ethiopia, they settle. Eritrea, Djibouti, they settle. Chad, they settle. And Kenya, Somalia, you can see some of them in Tanzania, in Uganda, and then Burundi and Rwanda was like the last country for them to settle. And then when you go down again, you started to find just like some genetically people like them, but they don't call themselves as Tutsi or things like that. All right. So that's the reason why the Hutus, they are way populated, outnumbered the Tutsi in Rwanda and in Burundi, right? So Rwanda has been governed by Paul Kagame, who is a Tutsi, but there is only like 16% or 14% of Tutsi in Rwanda. The rest are Hutu, you know. Language in Rwanda, Kirundi, and French colonial legacy. Religion mostly Christian, Catholic, Protestants, with some indigenous beliefs, historic and backgrounds. Traditionally, the Hutu were considered the majority agriculturalists, while the Tutsi were often cattle herders. The colonial powers, especially the Belgium, deepened ethnic divisions by favoring the Tutsi over the Hutu, which fueled resentment. After independence in 1960, political power shifted toward the Hutu majority, leading to tensions. And then in 1994, Rwandan genocide, one of the darkest chapter in Hutus and Tutsi relation. So I like to talking about this so much, but because there is a lot of misconception when people talking about the Rwandan genocide. And yesterday I was watching this lady. She kind of like a Miss Rwanda. They were questioning her questions in French, and she failed to answer that because you have to know that Rwanda used to speak French before Paul Kagame took over. So all the old Rwandan they speak French, and the newer Rwanda they speak French and English. But the majority of now youngsters they don't speak French anymore because Kagame uh, pulled out of Francophonie, which is like the country constituted in French-speaking countries. So in 1994, Kagame started a genocide, and he killed the president Kagame, actual president. He killed Juvenal Habyarimana, which was the actual president of Rwanda, and he was of a Hutu tribe, and he also killed Cyprian Tira, something like that, who was the actual president of Burundi. So Burundi and Rwanda actually come from the same kingdom. It used to be called Rwanda Urundi, right? And they are the same people. Like the Hutus in Rwanda and the Hutu in Burundi, they are the same people. And Kagame started the genocide, even though they always say like they killed so many Tutsi during the genocide. I won't believe it because I've seen it. I was very young. I was 1994. I was almost I was 3 years old, but yeah, I think I have the memory. And then Kagame said they killed Tutsi because Tutsi they were the minority, Hutu were the majority, and over 1.4 the population of Rwanda at that time was like 4 million, I think, stuff like that, 4 to 5 million. But they say they killed almost eight. Here's one of the darkest chapters in Hutu and Tutsi relationship. And an extremist Hutu-led government orchestrated the genocide, resulting in the death of an estimated 800,000 Tutsi and moderate Hutu. They don't talking about Hutu so much, but they're talking about Tutsi, right? And the extremist is not the one who started the genocide. They started who the person who started the genocide was the president of Rwanda, right? Paul Kagame. So it's a long story, but he's the one who killed the actual president. And then the other tribe is like, oh no, you can't kill our people. It's politics, and then we're gonna have to get involved. And then the Hutus started to attack the Kagame's people, which is led to kill the Hutus and the Tutsi, all of them, right? So this is the difference between Hutu and Tutsi genetically. The genetic difference between Hutu and Tutsi is very minor. In fact, there are more cultural and historical group than strictly biological or genetic one. Summary of genetic findings. Genetic overlap studies have shown significant genetic overlap between the Hutu and Tutsi. They largely share the same Bantu ancestry with some Nilotic East African influence among the Tutsi. And then they can share Bantu ancestry, but they are 50% Nilotic and they are 20% um, uh, Euro Asian, which is like already 70%, and then there are only quota of Bantu, which is they are like 13% Bantu, right? They are not literally Bantu. While the Hutus, they are 83% Bantu and 3% Nilotic or Eurasian. You know, Hutu are primarily Bantu origin, meaning their ancestors came from Central and West Africa during the Bantu migration. I've talked about Bantu migration again. It was too big. Bantu actually is the biggest population in Africa, and we are like over 1 billion of people in Africa. Tutsi are believed to have some Nilotic influence, which may trace back to cattle herding peoples from the north, example Sudan region, but they are still largely Bantu genetically. Not largely because they don't have. This is false because they don't have 20% of Bantu genetics in them. Y chromosome study, which trace paternal ancestry, suggests that Tutsi men have higher may have slightly higher frequencies of certain Neolithic marker, but these differences are very small and not consistent across all individual. So, man, that's it. To the people that are always saying like Tutsi and Bantu are the same people, they are not the same. They share um some few things, but literally they are not the same. All right. So if you have any answer, if you have any comment, please drop it in the comment below, and we can educate, we can learn from each other. And I will see you in the next video. Cheerio.